Hello fellow tankers, this is Dauntless, and welcome to Scout Guide. For this episode, I wanted to talk to you guys on how to complete Light Tank Mission number 15. Now, Light Tank Mission number 15 is a very hard mission to complete, especially for the Object 260, requiring you to net 8,000 combined, both damage and assist, and even for me, that's a very high task, a hard task to complete. And I'm pretty good with my light tanks, and so I wanted to share as much wisdom as possible that I have pertaining to this issue. That way those of you that are trying to complete this mission aren't just going in blind, crossing your fingers and just hoping, but will actually have information and knowledge on this subject so that you have the best possible chance of getting this mission sooner rather than later. So we'll just jump right in. The first thing that you should know is that you want to play a vehicle that's either tier 8, tier 9, or tier 10. And this is because higher tier light tanks have higher tier matchmaking, and this equals to more vehicles having more HP because of the higher tier. Obviously, lower tier vehicles are going to just have lower HP, and it's not going to allow you to farm the kind of damage that you need to complete this mission. And second, light tanks that are tier 7 and under, even if you have optics, recon, and situational awareness, such as my WZ-131 here, even with everything decked out, you're still only going to get your maximum view range up to the 430-ish mark, which is not adequate and not ideal. You'll have to run binoculars in order to do this, and that's just too much of a hassle for me. I think you need to be able to have both damage output as well as spotting potential, and those two combined are what's going to help you get this mission. If you look at tier like 6 tanks, for example, you know, even with optics, you're going to get only 426. Now, this is different for light tanks that are premium. The Type 64 as well as the Type 62 are both premium vehicles. Along with this Walker Bulldog, they all have above the 445 minimum view range that you should have when you're completing this mission. And this is because Wargaming won't nerf light tanks that are premium because people spent real money to get them. Tanks like the AMX 12-ton or the ELC, I'm running binoculars on both of them to get that view range up. And so again, I wouldn't recommend playing lower tier light tanks, and I would stick with the higher tier just because you're going to have the good view range, you're going to have better mobility, and there's just going to be so much more HP that you can farm. Alright, so let's talk about which tier is the best for this mission. Now, personally, I think tier 8 is kind of the sweet spot. It allows you to be lower tier in the matchmaking a lot of the time, and when you're bottom tier in a tier 10 game, that means you just have a lot bigger guns at the top being able to get that assist damage for you. You're not going to be relying too much on your own damage until the end of most of the games. Like, it's the end game that you want to be farming the damage, and towards the beginning you want to rely a lot on your allies. And when you play a higher tier tank, like let's say you were in the WZ-132-1, a tier 10 vehicle, if you get normal matchmaking in this thing, you're going to be 1 out of 3 top tier vehicles, and you're going to have to be relying a lot more on your lower tier vehicles to do damage, which alpha damage is lower at lower tiers, etc., and you're going to be relying more on your own gun. And to tell you the truth, you know, I've struggled with the tier 10 light tanks because they are very tricky to play, because light tanks are so dependent on their team, but when you're in a top tier light tank, the team relies on you to carry, and it's just, I don't know, I feel like it doesn't work as well. And so personally, I would be choosing a tier 8 vehicle. If you don't have one, I would go with a tier 9, and then if you don't have one, I would go with a tier 10. Obviously, tier 10 vehicles can get into solid tier 10 games, which there is, again, a lot of spotting potential there as well, but you're going to be going up against other tier 10 light tanks with very good view range and better team compositions, to where if you make a small mistake, you're going to get evaporated. And I find that the tier 10, solid tier 10 games are usually pretty brutal and can be very difficult to get good damage in. So again, it's completely up to you which tier you choose to play, but personally for me, I really like the tier 8 myself. Now, diving in a little bit into more detail, which tier 8 or tier 9 or tier 10 vehicle do I think is the best for completing this mission? Now, I really like light tanks that are of the Chinese nature, and so because of that, I kind of have a bias, but in my opinion, the WZ-132 is my favorite. It has amazing camouflage, it has a very reliable gun, and it has enough view range to get the job done, and it's just, in my opinion, the perfect light tank. Second to that, I would probably go for the RU-251. The RU-251 is also very low profile, has a great DPM gun. It's a tier 9 vehicle, but it also does a very good job at playing these missions. Beyond that, I think the WZ-132A not my favorite tank, but it's also very competent. I don't play a lot of French light tanks, and their autoloader allows you to do really good burst damage, but they're not as mobile as the Chinese, and in my opinion, they're second to best. But honestly, really any light tank of tier 8 will get the job done. Personally, I would stay clear of the American light tanks because they're pretty high profile, their camouflage values aren't that good, and their guns tend to be kind of hit and miss. They'll have autoloaders, or they'll have derp guns. They're just not good for farming consistent damage, which is something that you're going to want to do when you try to get this Light Tank 15 mission. Oh, and before I forget, obviously you can't leave out Soviet light tanks. They do an excellent job as well. They're very low profile, have good armor, they can get you out of tricky situations, and they're pretty fast as well. And they're obviously, Chinese tanks are clones of Soviet tanks, and so Soviets and light tanks work excellent for getting this job done. Next, we'll dive into what to take on your tank in terms of equipment. Now, equipment, I generally, if you're in the tier 8 tank or above, you're going to want to run optics. This is your number one priority. If you can't afford anything else, throw in optics because it's going to bump your view range by 10%. That means if your base view range is 400, you're immediately going to have 440, which is almost the max, and it's going to make you competitive, period. So definitely buy coated optics. I always buy extra coated optics during sales because I want to have extras for pretty much any vehicle I own. I throw optics on. It's what I do, and I think it gives me an advantage. If you're interested as to why I do that, even on my heavy tanks, check out my beginner's guide called How to Get XP Fast. I will put a link in the description below and you guys can check that out. The next item that I would mount on any of my light tanks other than autoloaders would be the medium caliber tank gun rammer, and this is because towards the end of the game you're going to want to be relying on your damage to push yourself over that 8k mark, and so having that 10% increase in DPM is important. And then last but not least, I would run a vertical stabilizer. The vertical stabilizer is going to allow you to make a lot more snapshots while you're driving and actually land a lot more of your shots. If you're playing in an autoloader like the AMX series, I would just switch out my gun rammer for an enhanced gun laying drive, and that will just ensure that you get a lot more precision out of your clip and overall just get more damage. Alright, so let's talk about crew skills. Now, crew skills, depending on the nation, depending on the tank, the amount of crew that each tank has, it's going to vary. Sometimes the radio operator will also be the commander. There'll be a lot of different variations to crew, but generally you'll have 3 or 4 members, and you'll be able to have a 2 to 3 skill crew, which will allow you to maximize the potential of your light tank. Now, the first thing you'll want to do for sure is get 6th Sense on your commander. I can't stress how important this is enough because a lot of people neglect having 6th Sense on their light tanks, but realistically, this is the difference between being in the middle of a really good game, almost having it, and then being one-shotted by a tank destroyer because you didn't know you were lit, and actually being able to duck away and then come back and farm more damage. So definitely get 6th Sense on your commander. The rest of your crew should be trained in camouflage, and you're going to want to have that at 100% on the rest of your crew because it'll help you stay undetected for longer. The second crew skill you should have on your commander is Recon, and this will extend your view range a little bit more. And for your driver, or I'm sorry, your gunner, you should have Snapshot, which will allow you to hit more targets. You're going to want to have Smooth Ride on your driver because this will allow you to make, it'll help your reticle stay smaller when you're driving and shooting. And then for your radio operator, you should have situational awareness, which is like Recon, and it will allow you to have further vision. Now, as long as you have all those crew skills that I just mentioned, your tank is pretty much set. The only thing that's really missing is having camouflage on your commander, and I would start that once you have your Recon maxed out and start it as your third skill. You can choose to go Brother-in-Arms if you want to as a third skill like I did on this vehicle, and if you have that maxed out and then start camouflage, your tank will be really good to go. Brother-in-Arms, as you guys know, is like putting on vents on your tank. It'll boost your view range, and it will boost pretty much all the soft stats of your vehicle, which is very helpful. Alright, so everything I just talked to you about is basically how to best equip yourself to complete this mission, giving you the best probability of completing this mission. And, you know, this is all, again, things that you can do to your vehicle, but further on, there are things that you can do to influence your odds of getting this mission, and that is to platoon. This is extremely important, in my opinion, if you have friends that are willing to help you out on this mission, because going solo with puppies can be really frustrating, and even if you have the best setup possible and you get into the best map, your team could just do something super unpredictable and it could just ruin that game for you. And so if you have a couple platoon members that are going to be playing with you, I would recommend having one of them being in an artillery piece and one of them being in a tank destroyer. And you can spot things for your artillery to hit, and you can also spot things for your tank destroyer to hit. Preferably something with high alpha like the ISU 152 and anything like that that has that 155mm gun. Or I guess in this case 152mm gun. Basically anything with 750 alpha damage and above, and that will really help rack up that damage when you spot a vehicle. And also using TeamSpeak to communicate with your platoon members is crucial. If you have a target that you know you're going to light up soon, you can tell your buddy, hey, I know that this vehicle is going to be spotted in this area. I want you to get ready to shoot. Tell me when you're ready and I'll light them. And really communicate, and your artillery can be ready to stun them. You name it. It's really, really important to communicate with your team members in live time, because typing just takes too much time. If you guys don't know what TeamSpeak is, I'll put a link in the description below so you can download that. It's completely free and it's very easy to use. So when you queue into a game, Matchmaker is going to ultimately decide if you're going to be able to get this mission or not, because depending on the map you get, the odds of you actually getting this mission completed are going to change drastically. If you queue into a city map like Himmelsdorf or Runeberg, the odds of you getting this mission completed are drastically lower than if you get into a nice big open map like Prokhorovka. And so I want to give you a list of maps to really look out for, and the maps that are going to have the best chances of actually getting this mission completed. And like I just mentioned, Prokhorovka, aka or also known as Fiery Salient, very good map for getting a lot of assists. It's probably one of the best maps for trying to get Light Tank Mission 15 completed. So when you log into it, regardless of which spawn point you start at, definitely be on your A game. The second is Lakeville. Both spawn points are excellent for farming really good initial damage. It's pretty typical to be able to get anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000, depending on if you have guys shooting from you for you at the very beginning of the game. And another one that people don't talk about very much is Shire. There is a lot of potential assist damage to be farmed on Shire because of all the bush locations. And if you get into Shire, regardless of which spawn point you start at, you'll be able to have a very good game. And now there are a handful of other maps that are a little bit skewed in that one spawn point has an advantage over the other. And so when you spawn into any of these maps, focus on which side you're on, because sometimes the other side just won't be as good. And so an example of this is going to be Live Oaks. Live Oaks has an excellent northern spawn bush that you can jump into and farm a ton of damage if you play it right, while the south really doesn't have that equivalent. Another map that has a good north spawn is Malinovka. If you obviously if you play this map enough, you'll know that the southern bush is very, very small, and so you just have a lot more risk of getting killed. So the northern spawn in Malinovka is excellent, and then Mountain Pass, the northern spawn is excellent as well, because there's a bush you can conceal yourself in, whereas the south really doesn't have that option. Erlenberg, another excellent map that has a northern spawn that you can take advantage of, and the only map that has an excellent southern spawn instead of a north is Highway. Highway has an excellent bush that you can take from the south. And all of these maps that I just talked to you about, I actually have guides for all of them on how to spot. So if you're unfamiliar with them, I'll put a link in the description below, and you'll be able to check those out for yourself and kind of get a feel for what I'm talking about and the locations that you can use. Alright, so let's say that you log into a game and you get Shire or one of these maps I talked about, and you're like, okay, this is it. I'm going to get Light Tank Mission 15. Well, the first thing you're going to want to do is get to that location as quickly as possible without being detected and just set up camp. You're not going to be firing your gun during the first half of the game, and by half I mean about half the enemy vehicles remaining, or about half the time is remaining. And then you're going to want to pay attention to what's available to take shots for you, because you're not going to be firing. Now, if you'll notice on this hill, this is a very common location where vehicles will sit and shoot. And right now we have a Ferdy up there, a Grill 15, an AMX 1390. Grill is an awesome tank to platoon with if you are playing a tier 10 light tank, just because they're excellent with mobility and accuracy, and they're going to really be able to help you out. Now in this game I'm not platooned with him, but if you do have a buddy that has a Grill 15, excellent choice to platoon with. But you really want to get yourself into a situation like this where you're going to be able to farm the most damage possible in terms of assisting. Right now I'm doing a lot of the spotting, and within the first minute and a half of the game I'm able to get 3,300 damage. And notice right here, I take a shot at that emo. That's because I realize that there's really nothing here that can spot me, and so I take the risk and take the shot. You can get away with this sometimes, but be warned, you really have to have pretty good intuition and really be comfortable with playing your vehicle before you take risky shots like that, because realistically you're going to want to have your team do most of the work. Now, paying attention to enemy composition is important as well. Predicting, especially on maps like this where they have a heavy tank flank and a medium tank flank, knowing how many of the vehicles you think are going to be pushing towards that heavy line and playing accordingly, because if they had no tanks over there, sitting here would be somewhat worthless. Now, another thing that I'll point out is it's important to know that a location is quote-unquote expired. Sitting in this position no longer is going to get me any more spotting damage or assist, and so it's time to move. Go where the beef is, I guess. Go where there's a lot of HP, because you have to take advantage of opportunities. Falling back and taking a location that's going to allow you to get more assist damage at a better rate is much better than just sitting because you're not quite sure what to do. So definitely know that you can be passive in the beginning, but then start being more active and moving around the map and getting spots for your allies. And it is okay to shoot your gun occasionally, but really your gun is more for taking opportunistic shots and cleaning up at the end of a game. Another thing I'll point out too is that it's very, very important that you go for tracking shots when you have the opportunity to. And this is twofold. One, it's going to help keep your opponent in place, and you'll be able to circle them if you're brawling with them in a close range. And if you're not and you have allies that are able to shoot for you, any assist that you get towards your light tank mission 15 will count. And so definitely go for those track shots. Now you see me take a shot at that T10. I know that I'm not going to get lit at that distance, and so I go ahead and take the risk. But from here on out, I know that I'll probably get lit, and so before my Sixth Sense even goes on, I back off because I know I'm most likely lit and I don't want to take that risk. If you have Sixth Sense, it takes 3 seconds for Sixth Sense to actually go off, and so you're actually going to be sitting out in the open spotted for 3 seconds, and you have a good chance of being hit. And so use your own intuition as well. When Sixth Sense goes off, back off and count 10 seconds, or actually watch 10 seconds in the top right corner. Once 10 seconds is up, you are definitely no longer lit and you'll be able to move forward. Now notice I'm not actually up in the bush far enough to take shots, but I know I'm not going to have to take shots here, and so I'm getting into a position like this where I know my turret is just peeking over and I'm still able to get those spots. This is very important, knowing where your allies are located. I know that Grill is up on the hill. He's able to take shots on these guys if they push any more forward, and I'm just going to sit here and spot him for artillery as well as the Grill and the 30, and I'm going to try to farm as much damage as possible. I only have taken 2 shots this game. I've only connected 1, but again, light tanks aren't all about firepower. They're about camouflage and view range. And this is the point I made earlier where a tier 8 tank would be more ideal for these situations in order to farm more damage, because I'm in a tier 10 tank and I'm 1 out of 3 tier 10 vehicles, and I've still done only 300 damage, and I could have been doing everything I'm doing now in a tier 8 tank and had the exact same results, and I could have had another tier 10, let's say tank destroyer up on top, and I would have had, you know, maybe another 2,000 or 3,000 assist damage to my name. And so this is why I think tier 8 is really the sweet spot. Another thing that I'll note too is that HP conservation is really crucial. Notice that I haven't really taken that many risks, and my tank is still full HP even though the majority of our team is dead. If you play your light tank right and you're using it to strictly get spotting damage, you should be able to keep your tank pretty much full life for the entirety of the game. Really focus on keeping those shots that you take to a minimum. Almost play your tank with the mindset that you only have 1 HP left, and you'll be surprised how much better you play. Don't be a coward and don't just hide in the back the whole time with this mindset, but definitely don't take as many risks as you might do. So up until now, I almost have 6,000 assist and 1,000 normal damage. I'm up to about 7,000 damage. I'm 1,000 away from getting light tank 15 in this game, and unfortunately my team folded a lot faster. And again, this is why a tier 10 light tank isn't the greatest in my opinion for doing this mission, and I don't live a lot longer. The whole team is closing in. If they had a lot of slower vehicles, I would have been able to probably outplay them and get another 1,000 damage, but Unfortunately, the WZ has kind of a derpy gun, and they just had light tanks closing in on me, and it was just kind of a no-go there. But anyway, guys, hopefully that this guide helped you on giving you a better idea on how you can actually complete light tank mission number 15. Really, to sum up with the gameplay, be passive in the beginning, be more aggressive towards the middle and the end, start firing more as you go towards the end of the game. Don't be too predictable with what you do. Try not to get lit, and have your tank decked out as much as possible. Play in a platoon. Really know your maps well. Study the maps that you have the best probability of getting this mission in, and really know your locations, and have fun. Hopefully, you guys will be able to watch this and get your mission sooner than later. And again, I posted those videos in the description below on how to play these maps that I talked about, and if you watch those a few times, you'll get a pretty good idea of how to play these maps. And with the knowledge you gain from this and those videos, I really hope you guys will get your mission and your Object 260 soon. Anyway, guys, if you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a like down below. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel for more content like this in the future. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.